Hi there, my name is Memo, this is my channel Houseplant Goodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. Now today I want to talk about a slightly different topic. I've not got a plant in front of me, we're not going to go through a specific plant, but I want to talk about being overwhelmed by the volume of plants that you might have in your environment. And obviously this level of being overwhelmed by having to take care for your plants is going to be different for different people. I think I'm currently sitting at between 300 and 400 plants. I need to do a proper calculation at some point. Probably won't do because that might overwhelm me. But that level and that threshold is going to be different for different people. Now, I think it's important that this is something that needs to be discussed because essentially with something like getting overwhelmed by a plant collection, it kind of ends up becoming a bit counterintuitive because a lot of us got into houseplants because it gives us something to zen out about. I know it does for me. It's a task that you can do on a regular basis, going around and caring for your plants, watering your plants, propagating, all of these things that just kind of gets you in the moment. You're very present when you're doing something like this. As I said, for me at least, and it might be the same for some other people, it's very meditative as well. It's a nice kind of routine to get into. But there is that point where you get so much into your houseplants, for instance, when you've got loads of them. And again, as I said, it might be different from other people. For somebody like me, maybe 500 plants might be overwhelming. For somebody else, maybe 2, 3, 10 plants might be too much and it might be overwhelming for them. So just make sure that you're going with your situation and what you can comfortably take care of. Because essentially it almost creates a bit of a catch-22 situation. Say, for instance, you're somebody that likes traveling an awful lot. You can really get into your plants, and I know a lot of people did during the pandemic and people being in lockdowns and they've got loads of plants, but now they're realizing, okay, things are starting to start up again in the world. I can travel again. It's something that I used to enjoy doing a lot before, and that's obviously something that you do for your own self-care. Can I now take care of the 50, 100 plants that I've got in my house? Is that going to cause me stress? Who do I find to take care of it? All of these things you need to start thinking of and take into consideration. I mean, most people know this already, but I think it's worth the discussion. And with this video, as with all of my other videos, do comment down below. Let's start a conversation happening in the comments and let's see where everybody is with this, because it can get a bit too much. And I'll give you an example in my situation at the moment. I think I'm currently at the point with the level of plants that I'm caring for that it's better now in the winter. In the summer it was a bit overwhelming, but in the winter, because obviously there's less watering that's needed for plants, I was getting to the point now in the summer where I think I was spending an hour to nearly 2 hours every morning to care and water for my plants and all of these things. And then on the weekend, every Saturday and Sunday, it might be a 2 hour, 3 hour, even 4 hour a day task, essentially. So, but that was something that I don't mind doing. It's something that I enjoy. It's not for everybody, obviously. If you get to the same level as me and you have as many plants as I do, hopefully you've done that cognizantly and in a way that you know that bringing in that extra plant means there's going to be an extra bit of care that you need to give on top of what you've already got. So that's something to bear in mind as well. Like, I've come back to the example of somebody who wants to travel a lot. There are options out there, for instance, in terms of the type of plant that you might want to get. If you travel a lot and you don't have to stress about getting somebody to water your plants, maybe invest more in things that don't need frequent watering and aren't necessarily going to be a huge pest magnet. So I'm thinking things like the snake plant, the Sansevieria, the ZZ plant, things like that. Don't go and get a whole bunch of ferns, for instance, where you need to baby them all the time and that will cause you stress. Other things that you could do potentially to alleviate some of that pressure that you might feel of having to care for all these different plants is slowly transitioning your plants. And I say slowly because it will be a process and it does take some time. Slowly transitioning your plants towards self-watering. So using things like leca or lechuza pon and going down the semi-hydroponic route as well. And the thing is as well with some of these semi-hydroponic routes as well, at least what my experience is at the moment, is yes, you do see some great growth that's happening on the plants, but nowhere near as fast as you might get potentially maybe in soil. So that's maybe another way of controlling it, not just on the self-watering side of things, is if your plants grow a bit slower, it's not always a bad thing, especially if you've got loads of them. If your plants grow a bit slower, there's less to care for, basically. So there's things like that. Other things that people do is they get really excited and let's propagate, let's chop, let's propagate, let's do all these things. But then guess what you've just done there at the end of it? Unless you're planning on giving those propagations all the way, which a lot of people are really bad at not being able to do that, you then got more plants to take care of. And then the more you care for those new propagated plants, the more you feel responsible for them, so the less likely you are eventually to give them away. That's the problem that I have. But that's something else as well. So for instance, if you want to chop and propagate, do it being aware that that might cause more plants to come into your environment. And then maybe what I might say then, if you don't want to overwhelm yourself further, is maybe propagate 1 or 2 and see if you're comfortable with that, of having those 1 or 2 plants. And then whatever else you might have in terms of cuttings, you can give to friends and they can propagate it so they can have that plant in their environment and in their collection or in their household. Or, and this might be a controversial one for loads of other people, there is the compost bin as well. Like if you need to chop back a plant because it's getting too large and you want to be able to maintain it a bit easier and you don't want to propagate it and you've given that plant already to all your friends and they can't have any more of it, it is okay to just take a cutting and put it in the compost bin. So that's another thing as well that you could do. And obviously the kind of extreme situation would be, it's okay if you've overdone it and you've got too many plants, and again I'll say this again, in your environment, in your situation, to how much you can handle, it is perfectly okay to downsize. So I think there's what people might call it online on some of the Facebook forums. I don't really take too much part on the Facebook forums, but I think they call it a purge, where essentially they'll kind of get rid of some of their plants, some of the plants that are no longer, and I think it's the Marie Kondo thing of sparking joy. So that a plant that you might have got months ago, weeks ago, years ago, that was a very exciting plant and you're really looking forward to joining it to your collection, isn't really doing it anymore for you. And then what you can do with things like that in order to bring down that kind of overwhelming feeling of having to care for these plants is give that plant away to somebody else. Ask some of your friends, put it on a Facebook group, sell it. You might make some money off the back of it as well. Give it to somebody else who would care for it and they'll appreciate it more than you, and it will spark joy for them when it might not be doing that for you anymore. And it's the same thing again, not just that, but if you've got things like, for instance, I know a lot of my friends are getting into their slightly difficult to find aroids, rarer plants. I hate using the word rare plants, but that kind of notion, and they've still got a lot of their common house plants, which they might love. Generally speaking, what I would suggest to them a lot of the times is keep 1 or 2 of the common plants that you really love and you've got a personal attachment to, because there might be a story that goes along with it. Those plants are usually the hardest ones to get rid of, because if you've got a nice story that goes with a plant, then keeping that plant will always remind you of that situation, which is always a good thing. But some of the plants that don't and are relatively easy to replace because you can go into any plant store or garden center to replace, maybe those are the ones that you kind of open up to some of your friends, family, again online. There's loads of people that are getting into plants who might not have a lot of money to buy these plants, but they want to kind of get into the hobby essentially. Offer it to them and you'll be doing something good, because you'll get somebody else started in their collection, in their journey, or even if they're not planning on collecting plants for a long period of time, you might be helping somebody green up their space. And you can kind of, normally I would say downsize and leave it to the lower level, but generally speaking, if you're downsizing because you want to get more rare plants, is eventually you'll start with 200 plants, you'll take it down to 100 plants, and eventually you'll get back up to 200 plants. There'll just be 200 rare plants then, rather than 100 rare and 100 common plants. So, but find what your biting point is. And ultimately, I think the point I'm trying to make with this video is a lot of people get into this in order to give them some peace of mind, give them some zen, give them a routine that they can go onto and something to take them away from their day-to-day jobs or grind or any other stresses that they might have in life. Don't let this become another thing that stresses you out. And you can still have it in your life, just have it at a lower level or a more manageable level for yourself. And I think that is important. I don't think there's enough people that are talking about this. And there's also, and this is going to be massively controversial, you can still have a lot of plants. You can still have the plants that you care for. But if you really want that jungle feel and you don't want to take care of it, have some real plants and shock horror, get some ficus plasticus, or another word for that is artificial plants. There are a lot of artificial plants out there that don't look like absolute rubbish anymore, that they can pass quite quickly, and you don't need to do anything to care for them other than occasionally dusting them because they do get dusty. But you can still get that look and feel, and as I said, this is not going to be an option for a lot of people. Some people really detest the idea of artificial plants, and that's fine. But there are options out there where you can still have that jungle feel without getting overwhelmed by it. So yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to say about this topic. It's more of a conversation starter of a topic, really. I think there might be a few comments down below, and I'll be really interested to see some of your experiences, some of your opinions. Do share down below how you're coping with your collection or with the plants in your house. But yeah, that's everything I wanted to say for today. Hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly, truly hope that you have a great, great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.